We need to impose a cultural filter on immigration and only accept immigrants that can integrate into our Judeo-Christian society. We should challenge the Labour Party's hypocrisy, we should challenge their double standards, but we must also adopt the Benedict option for ourselves so that we are in the best place to look after our own community, because I guarantee the state is not going to look after us. What we need to be doing is to consolidate our communities, because we're spread too thin and we're trying to keep too many buildings open. We need fewer buildings and we need bigger congregations in those buildings. And so the Labour government, and you're not going to hear me praise the Labour government much, but the Labour government is doing exactly the right thing. We are in a national debt, and the Labour government needs to get the books back in balance. And one of the ways of getting the books back in balance is not giving tax breaks to an apostate church. But we should absolutely call out the fact that the Labour government has given 117 million to mosques up and down this country to combat Islamophobia. And yet, despite the fact that there is rampant Christophobia in this country, the same British government has given no money to bolster security for the Christian community. Churches are being attacked in East London. Churches are being attacked in Sheffield. There's been an arson attack against a church in Sheffield very recently. And yet there are Christians that have been driven out of their homes for the crime of being Christian because they've converted from Islam and become Christian, having to flee cities in England because of that reason. And the British government has given no money to the Christian community to protect against Christophobia. And so we should challenge the hypocrisy of this Labour government that seems to value the security of the Muslim community more than the Christian community. I'm not interested in tax breaks to keep open churches whose leadership didn't do anything to build a real Christian community and instead just built a liberal charity, or instead just built a civic religion with no connection to real Christianity. Those churches can close. They don't. If they can't maintain themselves, let them die, right? Because those communities are not healthy enough to keep themselves open. But what I am interested in is the security of the Christian community and the hypocrisy of our Labour government that is willing to fund the security of Muslims particularly, whilst not giving money to protect Christians from Christophobia. Where was the money given to the Hindu temples of Leicester when Muslim mobs were marching around Leicester? Why was no money given to the Hindu community? What about the Jewish community in Golders Green? How much money do they get or not get to protect their community from anti-Semitism? Why is it that some groups have special favour from the Labour Party and others don't? It's obvious why the Labour Party wants to give money for the security of the Muslim community, especially, is because of the votes. It's a vote winner. It looks good to the Muslim community for the Labour Party to give them special privilege in terms of protecting them from Islamophobia. That's why the Labour Party wants to pass a law that gives a special protection to Muslims, an Islamophobia law. Because the Labour Party is intimidated by the Islamist vote. The Labour Party realises that there is an emergent Muslim vote that they need to co-opt, and that without it they're going to lose a large number of seats. Now this gives lessons to Christians. Christians, you need to accept a reality that when an army is spread too thin, it becomes ineffective. The church is spread too thin. The parish model does not work. We need, as Christians, to consolidate. All of our parishes should close, and we should put all of our efforts into our cathedrals. And all of our cathedrals should become megachurches, and we should move as close to our cathedrals as possible. And when we move close and we find other Christians moving into the same area, we should work together as the people of God to guarantee our own security, to change the economy, to change the culture, to change the politics, to change the social norms of that area. We Christians must adopt the Benedict option, and when we do, Labour Party votes and Conservative Party votes will depend upon the Christian vote. And when they depend upon the Christian vote, you'll find that these political parties start recognising that it is important to look after the Christians and to listen to the Christians. Yeah. The reason why we are being ignored right now is because we're spread so thin that in every community there's one or two vocal Christians, but they can be just ignored as, oh, that's just a handful of people. Whereas in the Muslim community, the same number of activists are concentrated. So rather than it just being 5 here and 5 there and 6 there and 2 here and 4 there and 3 over there, it's 50 that are mobilizing an extra 500, and suddenly it becomes important to listen to that voice. And if it's a bigger issue, that 500 are able to mobilize thousands. This is how Christians need to learn to do society. The parish system is not working, and that's why Muslims are having special privileges over other communities, because they're using the Benedict option. We should challenge the Labour Party's hypocrisy, we should challenge their double standards, but we must also adopt the Benedict option for ourselves so that we are in the best place to look after our own community, because I guarantee the state is not going to look after us. The Labour Party does not care about the Christian vote. Any questions on what I've just talked about?
Any questions? Any questions on the topic of Labour?
Questions on the topic?
Isn't the issue
on the topic
the growing number of Muslims coming and the not growing number of Christians for political power?
Right, so it's vaguely on topic, it's tangent, but it is on topic by a glancing blow. So yeah, that is a real issue, and it is absolutely at the heart of this topic and what we're talking about. But let's be clear, English people, the reason why your demographic is dying is because you care more about sex and contraception and abortion and divorce than you do about families and bringing children into the world. Mass immigration is a symptom of the sickness at the heart of the English community. You care more about beer and football than you do about building families and communities. And as Christians, what we need to be doing is we need to be building communities. The irony is that we Christians are actually in a worse position than the rest of the population put together. How is it that the community that's pro-life and pro-marriage and against divorce has the least number of children? And again, it comes down to the parish system. We live as Christians with only like 7 hours of contact time between us all. And in that 7 hours, the leadership of our churches have to choose what you do with your time. That is not enough time to build community, and it's certainly not enough time to build family. We need to change the way that we're doing church so that we start building families. And only then, when we start having children of our own, there will not need to be mass immigration. Mass immigration is being brought about by the elites because the elites measure us all as a per capita unit of economy. And since we're not having children, per capita units of economy, GDP, is falling. And so they're replacing the population that we're not having because we're aborting a city's worth of people a year. So we're importing a city's worth of people a year. And that's the heart of the problem. Thank you for the question. It was a good question.
Thank you for the question, sir.
I'll add one final thought to that.
Go on, Bob.
There is one thing that we can do to strike a balance on where we are. We need to impose a Christian filter on immigration. We need to impose a cultural filter on immigration and only accept immigrants that can integrate into our Judeo-Christian society. And we must have not just an economic test for immigrants, but we must also have a cultural test for immigrants
I agree.
that says, okay, you've got the right qualifications, but you haven't got the right values, you can't come in. You've got the right qualifications and the right values, you can come in. But if you want less immigration, English people, start having more children. Yeah, go on.
Don't worry, AI will touch over.
I don't want to be on camera. Is it down to politicians to encourage people to go to church, or is it down to the faith leaders, the church leaders,
Right.
rather than the people themselves? Some of it sounds like they're trying to get the people themselves to galvanise this new
Yes.
faith. But shouldn't there be some kind of leadership into that?
Right. So to answer the question directly, it is not the responsibility of politicians to do the job of the church. The church is the people of God, and it is the responsibility of the people of God to invite people to accept the covenant of God established by Jesus Christ. Now, if there are Christian politicians, then Christian politicians can put their shoulder behind that enterprise. But Christians should be doing that whether there are Christian politicians or not. It is not the job of non-Christian politicians to be doing that. And it is an unhealthy attitude of the people of this country that we think it is the job of politicians to fix all of our problems. Ability for fixing our own culture, for fixing our own society by becoming activists in doing that very thing.
So how can Christians...
Can I take another question from someone else? Unless you'd like to debate, in which case we can debate.
Well, just how can Christian
Would you like to
leaders-
debate? Would you like to
Well, I
debate?
think it's up to Christian leaders
Would you like to debate?
to encourage people in
Would you
that.
like to debate? Okay, are there any other questions by anyone else? Madam, I asked you if you would like to debate, you just ignored me.
Well, I just countered.
Would you like to debate?
If you want to respond to what I said.
Would you, I'm going to ask you one more time and then I'm just going to ignore you. Would you like to have a conversation? Would you like to have a debate? Would you like to have a conversation?
What I just said.
All right. Any other questions, guys? She had a chance. Any other questions?
You got a question, I mean.
Going once,
Going once, so.
going twice,
Going twice, so.
going 3 times. All right. No one else has got a question.
So Bob,
So, yeah, go on, bro.
so I wasn't here for the debate you had. So, but I want to ask you something not connected with whatever you just discussed. But I can do that when you finish.
Yeah.
So can I
Ask a question, yeah, bro.
Yeah.
I said any other questions.
Oh, I didn't realise.
Oh, three, Mikey.
So just to let you know, Bob, over 60,000 people are currently watching. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you specifically about Tommy Robinson, an event which is taking place on Saturday.
Do you have any other kind of question?
No.
Every week I've got a question about Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, but
I love Tommy Robinson.
On this panel,
Right.
60,000 people want to hear your view.
Go on.
Will you be at the event on Saturday?
Yes.
Why is it important for people to be there?
Right, the reason why it's important for people to be at the protest on the 1st of February, it is the 1st of February, right, is because right now in this country, because of a tyrannical spasm within our liberal elites, there are political prisoners who are in prison for telling the truth. Tommy Robinson is one of those political prisoners. He is being persecuted by the Liberal state for exposing the complicity of the Liberal elites in the systematic raping of tens of thousands of children. Not just him, but other people as well. It has become well known that the man that slaughtered those 3 little children and tried to murder others in the horrific events that have been recently reported was a Muslim. And there are people in prison today for saying that just after that horrific event. So people are being chucked in prison for telling the truth. Now that is a slide to a Trudeau liberal soft tyranny. In a Christian society, people should never be prosecuted for telling the truth. If it is true, it should be a defense against prosecution that it is true, whatever the truth is. And the truth in a Christian culture, in a Christian judicial system, will always be a defense. That means that if your guilt or non-guilt depends upon the truth, you would be found non-guilty if you were found to be telling the truth. But in a liberal society where truth is secondary to the politics, is secondary to the political agenda, is secondary to the ideology, then truth can be sacrificed for the ideology. And that's what we're seeing today. And that is what's at stake with the arrest and the prosecution of truth tellers like Tommy Robinson. And that is why everybody should be at this protest on the 1st of February. Let someone else ask a question. Would you like to ask another question?
I mean, really, I was just drawing you out on what you're saying. The thing is, I don't necessarily disagree.
Yeah.
So it's not a debate as such.
The thing is, I'm doing a Q&A, miss, so I'm taking questions from different people. So what's your question?
My question was, what do you think, how can the Christian leaders change the so-called parish setup?
Right, great. Yeah, so the question is, how can, correct me if I'm wrong, how can Christian leaders change this parish setup into something different? Yeah, and it's a good question, and the truth is that we Christians are suffering as a community because we have really rubbish leaders. Oh, how I wish we had leaders who were as strategic as the Muslim leaders. But what we have are amateur leaders who want to run social clubs and charities, and they want to run civic ritualistic fraternities. They don't see themselves as the leaders of the people of God. How Christian leaders can change. Here's a message for all the bishops. Here's how you change. Here's one way that you can change. There's multiple ways that they can change this, but here's one model by which it could be changed. If I was a bishop of a parish, of a diocese, all of my parishes that weren't large, I would sell them. All of that money that I would get from the sales, or I would turn them into business units to generate money for the diocese. That money I would use to fund to build a block of flats or buy a series of houses around the cathedral, and I would move as many of my congregation into the vicinity of the cathedral as possible. I would move all my outlying clergy into the cathedral, and the cathedral would act as a church to the entire city. And I would move as many of my congregation in. I'd set up a diocese fund to continually buy properties to move the congregation in. And then collectively we would start setting up businesses around the cathedral, and we would start to take over that area. And then when we're the biggest voting block in the constituency, I would then put up a Christian for election and get Christians to vote for that Christian to be elected. And because we would be the majority in the school, we would demand that the school educates according to our cultural norms, and we would live our culture out together in that vicinity. That would be one way to do it. Another way to do it is that church leaders start bringing their people together. Up and down this country there are networks of church together councils, church together groups. Those leaders could work together to mobilize the Christian community to work together on lots of different issues. They already do on food banks. They work together on food banks. Well, apply that same logic to your politics, to your economics, to your cultural practices and so on. So that would be, I hope you feel I've answered your question.
Yes.
Wonderful to talk to you. Me and him are going to go for a drink. Good night and God bless. Bro, do you have one more question before I go?
No, I sort of have a quick private off air. Less than 1 minute.
Less than 1 minute and then I'm going to go. Can I give these...